Did you know that over 2 million Americans are addicted to opiates? What's even more shocking is that only 1 in 10 of the people with substance abuse disorders get the help that they actually need. You may be telling yourself, that would never happen to me. And believe me, I said the same thing. When I was a kid, I used to have a lot of social groups. I was very well liked, and I found myself hanging out with people that were partying a little bit more than the other friend groups, and I found that fun and edgy. Eventually, I became the party girl, and then I inevitably became addicted to drugs and alcohol. The purpose of my speech is to explain what a slippery slope it is to recreationally use drugs, where it took me, how I overcame it, and how I stay sober now. So let's talk about how it all got started. So when I was a kid, I was really obsessive, and I used to get really into whatever I was into, whether it be a movie or a video game. I would just suck it dry. Because I sucked it dry so quick, I would move from topic to topic. That really aided in me being bored all the time. So the boredom eventually stemmed to curiosity, and I was very curious to know how alcohol would affect me, how marijuana affect me, so on and so forth. So I also found there was camaraderie, and the friend group that I had, we were relating on how that trip hit us, and just really vibing on the last party or whatnot. Next, I'd like to talk about how it progressed. So eventually weekends started to roll over into weekdays. I would be too hungover on Mondays, so I would drink a little. That eventually escalated to just drinking and using all 7 days of the week. Then I stopped hanging out with the friends that I have that were ambitious. I really found that I wasn't on the same page as them, and I really couldn't relate to them anymore. Now, after many years of just hanging out with just people that were fillers and people that were on the same page as me, I realized one day when I looked around that I had nobody that truly cared about me, and I found myself very alone. That lasted a really long time though. I endured that for so long before I actually made any change. And speaking of change, let's talk about how I eventually pulled myself out of it. So the first step to actually finding help was to surrender. And that included accepting that I had a problem. It really is true when they say that acceptance is the first step to recovery, because for so long I was in denial. When people would tell me that I had a problem, I just couldn't believe it. I just thought that they were like hating on me. I just did not want to believe that I had ran my life to the ground. But eventually I did, and I surrendered. And then I worked the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That really did change my life. There are so many things to that program that are really just looking in the mirror and really doing really soul searching and digging deep into why the problem started. There's a lot of cognitive therapy in the program, and the most influential part of the program for me, and my last speech was about it, was actually making amends to the people I had harmed, and really just letting them know that I'm aware of the harm that I caused them, and there are some amends that I can't make verbally. They are called living amends, and that'd be the amends with my daughter. I can't really sit her down and give her the gritty details of what happened, but I can live the amends and just ensure that it never happens again. Now I'd like to talk about how I've stayed sober for 4 years. I continuously practice the principles of the program, which is just staying on top of really just being the best person that I can be. I also continue to believe in a higher power, and that is not an almighty deity by any means. It's just believing that I don't have control, because left to my own devices, I will probably drink and use again. So I really just stay connected spiritually. And then lastly, I work with other alcoholics and addicts. I find that really rewarding. I go to detoxes, I tell my story to them, and I think it's important because for so long, people, there's a really a stigmatism to alcoholics and drug addicts, and I think it's important for them to see that someone like them can have a successful life and do great things. So, before, when I used to hear stories of alcoholics and addicts, I used to think that they were just weak and that they really didn't have any willpower. And I really learned from working with other alcoholics and addicts and working on myself that that's really untrue, and that we are just wired differently. And I hope now that you've heard my story and you see somebody who's going through problems like this, that you're a little bit compassionate for them and empathize with them a little bit, because it's really hard to get through like I did. Also, if you're ever curious, just remember my story and remember that curiosity almost killed this cat.